Chapter 10 The Log. He read back through the log when the radio work stalled. This happened sometimes, not often, but sometimes, when he'd been working on something for long enough that his hands stopped knowing what to do next and he needed to step back and let whatever was unresolved in his thinking resolve without his interference. He'd learned not to force it. Forcing it produced mistakes, and mistakes out here cost things he couldn't replace. So when his hands stopped, he stopped, and he did something else until the knowing came back. Reading the log was good for this. It returned him to the observable world, to the factual and the catalogued, to the version of himself that moved through the suburb with purpose and recorded what he found. It reminded him of the project. Not the radio, the larger project. The one he'd been conducting since the beginning without ever formally nomming it. The record, the account, if there was anyone left to read it. He made tea, he sat at the table, he opened the log to the beginning. The early entries were strange to read now. Not wrong, they were accurate. He could verify most of them against his map and his memory, but strange in the way that your own handwriting from years ago was strange. Recognizable and slightly foreign at once. The person who'd written those first entries had been operating on a different frequency than the person reading them. Tighter, more defended. The observations were precise, but they had a quality of deliberate narrowness, as if the writer had decided what was relevant before looking and was only recording confirmation. Day 4, Mercer Court shelter secured, sightlines adequate, exit routes, front door, kitchen window to rear yard, second floor window to garage roof, immediate area clear. He didn't remember writing that. He remembered the days it described, the first assessment of the house, the careful mapping of exit points, but the entry had the quality of something read rather than recalled. An account of events that had happened to someone he knew well. He turned pages. The entries lengthened as the weeks passed. The shorthand loosened. By the third month, the observations had begun to include things that weren't strictly tactical. The way the afternoon light hit the bottle shelf, noted without apparent reason. The name he'd given to the corner of the map where two streets met at an odd angle and formed a small triangular space that he found himself passing through more than was strictly necessary. He'd called it the pocket. He didn't remember deciding to call it that. He read through the months. He found the entry toward the back, not the most recent pages, 2/3 of the way through maybe, in what would have been late summer by the feel of the entries around it. He read it once. He stopped. He read it again. Shell spiral, large, cream-white shading to deep rose. Found on beach, southern coast, August. Hot day, crowded. She was looking for sand dollars. I found this one near the water line and she said it was too big to carry home and I carried it home anyway. Still have it. Don't know why I'm writing this here. He sat very still. The handwriting was his. He was certain of that, the particular formation of his lowercase letters, the way he made his GS, the pressure of the pen on the page which was consistent with every other entry in the book. His hand had made these words. He did not remember writing them. He looked at the entry before it. Pharmacy strip, secondary salvage run. Found additional wire gauge, useful, jumpy unit still operating in eastern sector, adjusted northern route accordingly. Clinical shorthand, his usual register. He looked at the entry after. Map updated, 3 new shelter sites marked, 1 potential hazard zone near the overpass. Collar still on windowsill, radio chassis work continuing. Normal present, his voice. The beach entry sat between them like something that had fallen through from somewhere else. Too specific, too personal. The wrong register entirely, not the log's vocabulary but something older, something that preceded the log by a distance he couldn't measure. She was looking for sand dollars. He didn't know who she was. He didn't have a asterisk she. He moved through the suburb alone and had always moved through the suburb alone, and the idea of a she on a beach on a hot day looking for sand dollars was not a thing his life contained. Except that he'd written it down. Except that the shell on the windowsill was large and spiral and cream-white shading to deep rose, and he'd found it in the first house and pocketed it without logging it because some things you just took. He looked at the windowsill. The shell was there, exactly as described, too big to carry home and he'd carried it home anyway. He turned back to the entry, he read it a third time. Don't know why I'm writing this here. The sentence sat at the bottom of the entry like a question the writer had asked and then left unanswered. As if whoever had written it had understood in the moment of writing that it was out of place and had written it anyway because not writing it would have been worse, because it needed to go somewhere. He pressed his thumb against the page. The ink was dry, long dry, indistinguishable in age from the entries around it. He checked the date notation at the top of the entry. He dated every entry, and it was consistent with the surrounding pages. He hadn't skipped days around it. It was continuous. The beach entry was part of the sequence. He had written it. He simply did not remember writing it any more than he remembered the beach. He closed the log. He sat at the table without moving for a while. Outside the window, the suburb was doing its usual afternoon things: the wind, the birds, the distant settling of something structural in a house down the street that had been settling for months. He had catalogued all of these sounds. He knew them. They were not alarming. He looked at his hands. They were on the table, flat, the way he'd pressed them against the windowsill after finding the collar. He looked at them with the attention you gave to something you were trying to understand, the structure of them, the specific geography of knuckle and tendon, the small scar on his left index finger whose origin he could not recall. When had he gotten that scar? He didn't know. He knew most things about himself. The knowledge was there when he reached for it, his history in broad, reliable strokes, but the scar on his left index finger had no story attached to it. He'd noticed it before and filed it as unimportant. He filed it differently now. What else didn't he know about his own hands? He got up. He moved to the workbench because movement helped, and the radio was there, and the radio was the most concrete thing in his life right now, the most verifiable, the thing that existed in direct response to his intentions. He could look at it and account for every component. He knew where each piece had come from and why he'd chosen it. He picked up the chassis. He turned it in his hands. The weight of it, the specific resistance of the metal housing, the small irregularity along the right edge where he drilled a mounting hole slightly off-center and corrected it. He could see the correction, the filled hole, the new hole 2 millimeters over. Evidence of his own hands working. Evidence of his own decisions made in sequence. He was here. He had done these things. He was the person who had done these things. He set the chassis down. He went back to the table and opened the log again to the beach entry. He read it one more time. She was looking for sand dollars. He let the words sit in him without trying to examine them, not pushing toward the memory they implied and couldn't produce, just holding the space of it. There had been a beach, there had been a woman, there had been a hot day in August and a shell that was too big to carry, and he had carried it anyway. He didn't know who she was. He didn't know who he was in that entry, the person on the beach, the person who'd found the shell. He knew himself now, this self, the one with the log and the map and the radio on the workbench, but the person on the beach with the woman looking for sand dollars felt less like a memory and more like a report of someone else's afternoon. He looked at his hands one more time. Then he closed the log, stood up, and went back to the workbench. His hands, when he picked up the tools, knew exactly what to do. He let them.